So starting the Facebook Live event, I'm checking if there's anyone having technical difficulties. It should be starting soon. Feel free to message me or message comment on this video. And we should be able to start soon. Okay, so sound is good. Here we go. So I'm going to screen share first and go through the entire PowerPoint presentation. And then for later, if you guys have any questions, feel free to message me. I'll answer those questions in a separate video. That video will have a live face cam and you'll be able to get your answers with the name of the question, with anonymous names. Again, you can also message me these questions if you don't feel comfortable posting them, and I can answer them anonymously. So we're just about to get started. The presentation should take about 30 minutes. It's 40 slides long. Choose your path to retirement, navigating the challenges on the road ahead. Here's my contact information, just so you can see it. It's a disclaimer that we use in our company. I represent New York Life, but you should consult your own professional advisor for tax, legal, and accounting aspects of this topic. So what we're going to be discussing today is retirement. Now, to get to retirement, you have to go through a few challenges. These challenges usually come out in 5 different ways. There's the first challenge, which is the cost of living, outliving retirement savings, taxes, number 3, expenses is number 4, and number 5 is expectation versus the reality. As you continue to navigate the retirement road, where do you see yourself? Are you on the right path, or have you encountered several retirement challenges? This can pertain to people who are right now thinking about retirement, they're close to retirement, or even people who are much younger that just want to have a head start. The first challenge is cost of living increases. This can be broken down to 2 terms, inflation and market risks. When planning for retirement, it's important to pay attention to inflation as it directly impacts our purchasing power, the ability to use our money to purchase goods in a negative fashion. In addition to that, there's also market risk. And I'll get more into that on the next slide. Inflation has real effects. We've seen the rate of inflation increase and decrease over time, but one thing is known for sure, that it will be there. The question is, to what degree will it affect our retirement? The inflation of the 1980s is long gone. In the 2000s, we've been experiencing a low inflation rate. 2016 had an inflation rate of 1.26. The current rate is about 1.75 estimated by Fed, which is the Federal Reserve Board's economic output. The first question we want to ask with inflation is, what has inflation done to the cost of living? Here we can see the effect of inflation on the cost of living. For some people, in a 20-year span, $500,000, $500,000 can buy them what they need at that time. Now, 20 years into the future, it'll cost $946,000 to purchase those very same goods. The effect can be dramatic. This graph itself uses an inflation rate of 3.24. It's higher than the inflation that we have now, but it's not too far away. Now, what about market risks? It's critical to know that there are market risks that you can face when you retire. In the worst case scenario, this could be one of the risks faced in late 2008 or early 2009, when the market could decline right when you will begin to start withdrawing funds. For example, an investor begins retirement with $500,000 in a portfolio, $500,000. In this scenario, the investor in 2008 suffered significant market loss. As they continued to withdraw funds, they found out that their savings were depleted after only 18 years. This tale was common at that time. And you can also imagine what would happen to someone who retired and found that there were no continuous market gains. Another challenge is outliving our retirement savings. So what, aside from market risk, can contribute to the possible depletion of our retirement savings? Not having enough savings to match the number of years we're expected to spend in retirement. That's a double-edged sword, because when we're looking at withdrawal rates, we want to strike the balance right. If we withdraw too much, there's depletion of sources. If we don't withdraw, then we're limiting our enjoyment. So there is an economic argument to that. Retirement funds such as 401ks, IRAs, and CDs have a minimum withdrawal rate. However, if you withdraw too soon, you can actually reduce your savings. There is a timetable which comes with every age for withdrawal rate minimums. But it's a question that everyone has to answer when they get to that point. For those of us with longevity in our life and our heritage, the question for us becomes, how long can we expect to live, and do we have enough saved up for that? Here's a few statistics just so you can look. If you retire at 65, using national databases, you'll find that you can expect to live until age 86. On the 86th birthday, you're expected to live until age 93. And 1 of 4 65-year-olds are expected, using those statistics, to live until past age 90. And looking at that, if someone does reach age 95, 1 of 10 of those people will live past the age of 95. Actually, that statistic is for everyone you know at this point. Likely 1 in 10 of your peer group will live till age 95. And this was done in the Social Security Administration. I'm seeing a few technical difficulties. You know, for someone who loses a spouse, they lose a source of support in times when times can get tough for one or the other person. The question is, if you lose a spouse at age 65, even with the widower effect, you still have a 70% chance of reaching age 85. And for that additional 20 years, you have to understand what you're going to spend to maintain your lifestyle and also to take care of medical expenses. We're going to discuss that more when we reach our third topic. We discussed so far the effect of cost of living adjustments, which is inflation and market risk. That's one. The second thing we discussed, just as a recap, was longevity. And now we're moving on to a third topic, taxes. So for those of you just joining us, you did not miss much. We're actually getting to the most important part. Taxes. They affect all of us, and when retirement, it's no different. So the question is, how big is that tax bite when we reach retirement? Most retirement plans have tax deferral. This is your traditional IRA. This tax deferral doesn't last forever. You actually do have to pay taxes whenever you take a withdrawal. And when you're paying those taxes at the end, you're paying taxes on the full growth in your tax bracket. Some of us believe that, you know, we might be in a different tax bracket, lower tax bracket when we retire. That's what most people plan towards. But if you believe that you're going to have the same level, then for those people, assuming tax rates today, you might be better off doing something like a Roth IRA. In that case, it's the same question. You want to pay taxes now or do you want to pay taxes later? You might wonder what's the difference. Well, with Roth IRA, if you're expected to actually have higher taxes in retirement, one, you're going to pay those lower taxes now. Two, you're actually going to be able to grow tax-free. Conversely, traditional IRAs are you don't pay any taxes now, the funds grow from that initial amount you put in to retirement, and you pay taxes on the end amount, which is the initial amount plus all the growth you got over 20, 30 years for most people. So there is more to this tax bite. These include rollovers and taxes. So we want to look at how these are enabled. Most people have a 401k plan at work, and that might lead to a lump sum distribution at retirement. What most people will do, and most people don't know this, is that they'll roll over the 401k contributions into IRAs, which have smaller withdrawal rates. As I stated, IRAs give you a timetable where they tell you at what age what the withdrawal rate is. Heard of the 4% rule? That's to let you know how much you can withdraw safely without extinguishing your funds. The IRA withdrawal rules are between 1 to 2.5%, depending on your age. So one strategy you can do in retirement, which most people do, they learn about later on in life, is roll over their 401k assets into an IRA, which are already established. IRAs have the minimum withdrawal rule, but they start at a different age. Speaking of which, there are no minimum withdrawals for Roth IRA assets. So if anyone had a question about that, there is an advantage to Roth that's not seen traditional. There are limitations to people who can open Roths, conversely, but there is more to it than meets the eye. Going on, required minimum distributions and taxes. RMDs are taxed as ordinary income at retirement age. They're subject to state and local taxes, tax in the year taken, and after-tax contributions may be tax-free. That's the Roth IRA. Now we're looking at the fourth challenge, and I'll slow down a little bit on this. Once you've gone past the things you can control early on, which are, you know, being ready for inflation, there are funds that do that, being prepared for market risk, having a balanced portfolio, longevity, there are products that take care of that. There's, you know, planning, you can put a lot of money in, make sure everything's fine. So even if you live a long life, you've taken care of yourself. And then taxes, you can have vehicles in place, Roth IRAs contributing to those. But there are expenses in retirement. And by expenses, I don't just mean the vacations, the extras. There's healthcare costs, the cost of the basics, and for some people, leaving a legacy. This might not even be something as great as a trust. It could be funding your grandchildren's education when you retire. So longevity is good, but there's a cost. Healthcare costs are increasing at a rate higher than inflation. You've heard the statistic with college education costs, but the longer we're living, the more we can expect to see healthcare costs rise, even with better technology. There's a 50% chance of having enough money to cover out-of-pocket medical expenses on average for people who are retiring today. They found that if they had enough money to cover those out-of-pocket expenses using tax-efficient planning, they would save approximately $73,000 to $127,000 in long-term care costs. For women, that number is even larger because women do tend to live longer. Statistically, it would be $93,000 to $143,000. This is from These are estimates from 2009, where we looked at married couples and the average long-term care costs for that cross-section. What about the basics? You know, you still have to eat, you still have to drive around, and you do have to take a vacation. At least I hope so. For most of us in retirement, we expect to travel, spend our time as we see fit, not worry about earning an income, but using it. But you can see that cost of living does feed into that. And the question is, if you have healthcare expenses, will you be able to enjoy your retirement even after you're all taken care of with these expenses? And you can see here that healthcare, for most of us, it can be 7%, but it can go up as much as 84% of our retirement. So now going back to an older concept, we're looking at inflation. This was concept 1. This is just saying what $100 in 1990 would buy is now what you'd be $181 as of 2014, using the U.S. government's reports, using the Consumer Price Index. So this is just a way to look at investment power. It's a period of 20 years, so you'd expect that your investments would double at that time. You'd expect that using tax efficiency, you'll be able to get more. But it is something to keep in mind that you want to at least beat inflation. Cost of the basics does gradually increase. This is just a graph to show that. But what about the extras? So this includes the basic extras: eating out, going to the movies, events, entertainment, gifts, family and friends, celebrations, and vacation. For some of us, this can also include, leaving a legacy. I mentioned college planning. So now I'm going to switch over to the 5th challenge, which might be a little bit more, eye-opening. It's a little bit more fun to talk about, and we can talk about where you can go forward from here. So this is expectations versus reality. We already know that, the time is going to come. You do have to save up for it. It seems like a challenge, but the earlier you start, the less you have to actually save. They mentioned Social Security. We don't know if that's going to be there. But for the most part, the reality of it isn't as bad as it seems. Looking at conventional wisdom, for most people, the convention is, I'm going to spend less in retirement and, more now while I'm by young youth. But if you're thinking about doing things you enjoy, like traveling the world, playing golf, etc., you might want to rethink that. This is just a statistic looking at the differences. Most people have an expectation, incorrect expectations about retirement, where they think that they're most likely going to drop. Of those people, their anticipations are almost equal to what people experience. In fact, what they expect the drop is going to be is usually worse than the expectations, worse than the actual. So, for those of them expecting the retirement experience to be less than they are today, it's the opposite. So those who save, those who are conservative are usually okay. For those of them expecting, to spend more in retirement, to live that lifestyle at the peak of their career, at the highest point, they tend to underestimate. Okay, so in retirement, for those of you that are going to retirement, we use the 4% rule. It's similar to the 80% rule, the percentage of your income you need in retirement, which is something people look at. So usually when we're trying to figure out, what is retirement, where do I want to go, They look at the number of years they'll spend in retirement, multiply times their salary, or 80% of their salary. And that's the 80% rule. The 4% rule is when you have those accounts, how much each month can you withdraw and where you can go. With $1 million annually, you'd be able to withdraw $40,000. Now, it looks like a lot of money, but it really is. Depending on when you start, it's not really that much, and you'd actually be able to withdraw $40,000 annually. These statistics aren't saying that you'll withdraw $40,000 and you'll be good for 20 years. These actually go all the way till 30 or 40 years. So we're looking at portfolios. There is growth even in your investments in retirement. The 4% rule is a guideline, but depending on market conditions, you want to set yourself up so that you withdraw the items in your portfolio which are at their peak. So you want to withdraw in a tax efficient way. You want to withdraw in a way that's likely to keep the rest of the investments still safe for the next year to come. So this is just looking at Social Security and private pensions. This is where most people will see the retirement income. The survey is a little bit dated. This might mean working longer, but it also might mean changing the way you do investments. So, we see retirement at age 65. Some of us will probably continue on until 70. You've seen studies being done. That's really a question, but we would be living healthier lives up until that point as well, so we would be able to work. People my age, this is years down the line. There's also an increased need for protection on the health and chronic illness side. People are living longer, and people can live long, fulfilling lives. It's something that I'm lucky to have with my own grandparents. But, there is a need for health protection. Not everyone would have an in-house doctor or the ability to travel to a foreign country to get medical assistance. You probably want to have something in place where you can keep track of that. New York Life offers this through different avenues. I myself have seen the financial engineering done in that. There are annuities which would let you withdraw money tax-free, where all you would do is you roll over from your normal annuity into one of these annuity products. You would do so in the event of a chronic illness or in the event of medical need, where you just need a nurse around the house or medical bills pile up. This is not in any way entail that your standard of living has dropped, that your health has failed you. It just means that you would need assistance to maintain that same level of independence and that same level of enjoyment in retirement. But it'll cost you. So what people will do is they'll put a lump sum into an annuity, and they'll find that they've actually done really well in retirement, but they're going to burn through all that money if they were to take it out to cover these healthcare costs. So what they'll do is, find a solution to that. The solution is you can put money into an annuity and then withdraw it tax-free. These are the same IRA assets we talked about. This is something which we put in, we deducted from our income taxes. So we didn't pay tax on it, we got a deduction. That's great. And now at the end, we're thinking that we have to pay taxes. Actually, no, that's not the case. If you're withdrawing it from a health-based annuity, you can withdraw it tax-free. So this is the tax-free solution to that. And some people will think about doing this early on. You just want to have that in place. You want to make sure that the annuity that you're in before you do that is acceptable to that tax-free annuity. You can do it at any time in your retirement. You just have to make sure that you have that first annuity in place where you're holding the assets to do annuity transfer. For those of us with term life insurance, we know that we have it. Most of you have the ability to convert. New York Life does accept term life from other carriers. We do the big three: Mass Mutual, my former employer, Northwestern Mutual, one of the big players, and Prudential. Because these big three have already done your medical, we will take those term life contracts, and for most of them, if they're convertible into those policies of those insurers, and for other companies as well, if those companies will take it for granted and let you skip the medical and switch your whole life, we do the same. So New York Life allows that. We're pretty competitive on that edge. For those of you that are seeking New York Life whole life, we have something called the Chronic Care Rider. It does the same thing. It gets a little bit iffy when you're talking about death benefits, but you'd be able to use that benefit during your life. So you can see it helping whenever you're working your leg on a ski trip, on kickboxing, and then just hit that meniscus. Or, as you're getting older in retirement, you're still working. A lot of doctors out there that are working up till age 70, not because they're forced to, but because they like to earn money and they like to continue their practice. For those people, that chronic care rider is still there. It's not like health insurance where you'd have to pay premiums, and the premiums are incredibly, it's not possible at age 65. It's not like disability insurance where at 65 they tell you you're stuck. It is something where you, for $1 million or for whatever the number of assets, you take 4% of the death benefit, not the cash value, and be able to draw that down within 25 months, and it will recycle itself after a few years where you get back to that same death benefit. So it's a really useful rider and policies. It costs usually about $300, and most people won't use it, but over a lifetime, it takes care of the disability need, it takes care of any chronic care leave. You don't have to actually prove that you have a disability. You don't have to prove that you have a chronic issue. You can leave a disability policy in place. It'll be off the record. Chronic illness, they would just, they would just have to see proof that you've seen a facility. But for the most part, they wouldn't care. You could be, moonlighting as an athlete, have nothing to do with your profession. Maybe play guitar, maybe go skateboarding, be completely fine doing this. Because a disability, it's more about your profession. There's extended period of care. I mentioned 25 months. It's similar to disability in that you have to wait 90 days, but they'll reimburse you for the 90 days. So the chronic care rider is pretty interesting in that it takes care of most of this. I mentioned variable annuities. That takes care of the tail end. Most people wouldn't worry about that till the end of retirement because they can see it where, those needs aren't just, 25 months or 2 or 3 months, and they'd like to have a pool of money. It's more of something that's going to be there in the long run. Chronic health conditions, it's just looking into ADLs and the likelihood of once you hit age 65, you're going to need help with something. It doesn't mean that you'd be disabled. You just mean that, you are in retirement, so you don't have to work, but you want to be taken care of. You want to make sure that, everything's going okay. And you want to do this for, but most doctors would say, to make sure nothing gets worse and just continue on moving on. Now, this is actually the second to last slide. There are some things that you can do that are fixed. This is not bonds. It would be fixed income or FDIC bank accounts. This is the disadvantage of that, where your rates are not as competitive and the income is taxable. So if you're not taking advantage of an IRA, if you're not, looking into having something in retirement or even having something to a brokerage account, I would recommend you do so. You can play with the stock market when you're early on. And IRAs, this is up to a cost basis, will accept those stocks into so you can roll over those stocks into an IRA for the most part. You can make emergency contributions as well. You lose the tax-free effect, but for the most part, there are other ways. The IRA is probably the best way. 401ks for sure, get that employer match. This is closing our presentation for today. You can give retirement the green light. There are challenges, but there are ways to overcome it. And this ends our presentation. I'm going to open up a separate webcast for questions.